It was like recognizing the friend that fits into your season right now. Like that could be your person. It may not be the one that you think about, but what is the one that most aligns with your life right now? And maybe that's the friend right now that you can connect more to because your lives are so aligned. The banyan tree is a tree unlike others, a representation of resilience and strength through its ability to overcome the status quo and fulfill its purpose.
It knew that it was meant for something bigger and didn't allow the limits of other trees to confine its growth.
And our story looks similar. I'm Leslie.
And I'm Mindy. And our hope is that every one of our listeners learns to take up all the space they were created to, just like the banyan tree.
Welcome back to the Banyan Effect podcast. I am your co-host, Leslie, and today Mindy and I are going to talk about friendships. When Mindy and I do a lot of brainstorming for what we're going to talk about on the podcast, we often turn to, well, what are we experiencing in our life right now? And what are some of the challenges, triumphs, barriers, changes that we're experiencing? And likely if we're experiencing, there are a lot of other women and people in this, whoever is listening, that are experiencing the exact same thing. So one of the things that Mindy and I find ourselves talking a lot about on walks in the woods and walks around our yards and at kids' sporting events is friendships and how much our friendships have evolved and changed, and seasons of friendships and purpose of friendships and the different types of friends that we have in our life. I think both of us even find ourselves coaching and doing a lot of talking with our kids on friendships. And we thought, what a perfect time or what a perfect topic to talk about on the podcast. Because again, it's something that I think a lot of us are dealing with right now, both the good and the bad of them. It's friendships.
Yeah, and I think that we're, I know you and I are at this age that we're kind of I think maybe a little bit of a pivotal time in our lives as far as adult friendships go. I think adult friendships is, especially the older you get, I think it all of a sudden becomes this thing that nobody warned you about is this new set of relationships that you kind of have to manage. And the thing is, I think that if there's anyone out there that's feeling a struggle in their adult friendships or lack of adult friendships, it's because they're really important. And I think that as women, as we get older, as we navigate the different seasons of parenting, like we need friends. But I think sometimes we get into these situations where it's either like we're in a season, a new season with some of our old friends, and then you don't necessarily know how to make new friends, and it's just this kind of awkward scenario that you don't really know what to do with. So today we want to just talk a little bit about like how to make new friends, how to create boundaries and expectations, and how to just navigate maybe some old friendships and the new friendships, and just help to know that like you're not alone out there in these issues with your friendships, and then how to handle them.
Mm-hmm. It was leading up to this podcast, I saw a meme on Facebook, and I was like, wow, that's really good timing. I took a screenshot of it, and it said, "It's always so wild to me how friendship works. Someone who's not related to you, has zero obligations to, but loves you wholeheartedly." And I just loved that so much. Like, I think there's such an important, again, like you said, an important and unique part of our life. I mean, one of our last episodes, we talked about marriage and how challenging and hard and beautiful marriage can be. And I think friendship is right up there with marriage on the importance it has in our life. And it's no reason that it's hard because of that.
Yeah, and I can say that the last year or 2 years, as you know, if anybody here has been listening for any amount of time knows it's been a rough couple years, right? And my circle has gotten a lot smaller over the last my friendship circle, and it was because I had to learn to put up some boundaries around friendships, because one of the things that I've learned through therapy is that I'm an overfunctioner. And one of the things that I know from learning that about myself, that I overfunction, is 100% relationships. And I just got to a point where I was just so exhausted emotionally in all kinds of different areas of my life that I couldn't overfunction anymore because I just didn't have it in me. And so I've learned a lot about boundaries, emotional boundaries, physical boundaries, all of that stuff. And it's what it ended up doing is it really made my circle shrink. And this is what I will say about that is if you find yourself having to put up some boundaries around friendships, and when I mean boundaries, just meaning like making sure that you do have the extra time in your calendar for everybody that you're trying to squeeze in, because if you don't have margin, you don't have time for everybody that maybe you're trying to make time for. And so when I got to that point where I was like, I cannot plan my weekends with friends and or family members every single weekend right now because I need margin because I am healing,
Mhm.
emotionally healing, and it takes time and it takes peace and quiet and walks in the woods, and I had to prioritize that. And so I kind of one of the boundaries that I sort of put up is that I can't be the one that's always reaching out and planning these things. And I'll tell you from my perspective, when I put up that boundary and I stopped doing that, my calendar freed itself up. And what that kind of said to me is that, well, what kind of relationships were these if when I stop putting in all the effort, they fall away, they fall apart? And that was really eye opening for me. And at first, it really hurt. But then I realized part of it was my doing. Like I was the one that was needing to fill my calendar with play dates with my
Mhm.
friends 24/7. And when I finally realized like that is not what defines a friendship is that we see each other every single week or every other week or that we're together all the time and that we're if I'm going out to dinner, I'm inviting all my friends to go out to dinner, you know what I mean? It's like that was a me problem is what I learned about that is it is okay to have friendships, really really good friendships and not overfunction them to the point where you feel the need to have to be together all the time. And I think that most people will appreciate the freedom that that brings to be like you're off the hook. Like I still love you and I still want to see you, but I need a boundary right now that I need margin in my calendar. And I bet you most people are going to say, "Me too, sister. I feel you."
Yeah. Well, I think there's a joke that I've heard many millennials say of like, you have these plans for the weekend and someone cancels and you're like, "Oh, yes, thank God they canceled." And you're so relieved that the plan was canceled, and that's totally because we don't allow enough margin in our life. Like you said, like we don't need every moment of every day of every weekend planned. In fact, it's really important to have this individual time or that reset time. And one of the boundaries, and Minnie, we actually talked about it. One of my dearest friends, Ashley, we've been friends since before either one of us have memories. I was wanting to and be with her. And so we were trying to schedule these weekends and it was like, does this work? No. Does this work? No. Oh, I've got 4 hours here. And I kept trying to cram it in to weekends in between kids' soccers because the relationship is really important to me and her friendship is really important to me. And it got to a point where I was like, I just have to say out loud that I need a break until May, which is now, and that was back in January. So we're talking 4, 5 months of like, "Hey, I can't do anything right now. I don't have it in me to see each other in the next 4 months." And that conversation was a really scary one to have. I remember being like, I don't want it to come across in the wrong way because I love her dearly.
Yeah.
But what ended up happening was, I think, a sense of maybe relief or just clarity for both of us, where it's like, I love you. You love me. We're still going to be friends 5 months from now, even if that means we just send a few text messages here and there between now and then. But there was just this mutual understanding that, like, it's okay. And we are in seasons of life right now where we're really busy. And even if we have a Saturday off, doesn't mean that we've got to look around and be like, who haven't I seen
Mhm.
in 3 months? And I'm going to go fill
Yes.
that day with them because we need that time. And so just throwing out that boundary was like, it was so relieving. And just this last weekend, we were able to see each other and we just picked right up where we left off. And so that boundary, like, it saved, I don't wanna say it saved our friendship because that wasn't gonna go anywhere, but it saved me from feeling this, like, weight of how the heck do I manage all of this?
Yeah, and that honesty that you and her exchanged, I think that it only brings you closer with your friends that are like the true friends that you have in your life understand and they love you and if they're mad at you because you are putting up boundaries, then that's a really that's a sign you should maybe pay attention to. But I think that it that honesty just gives you both so much freedom, each of you to, again, like, I know I've had those same conversations of like, I want to say let's get together soon, but I know you and I both don't, neither one of us have time for that. So, let's put a pin in it for like later in life when we're complaining that our kids are, that we're empty nesters and we have
Mhm.
all the time in the world. Another thing that as we last week we talked about uh our summer schedules and planning out your summer now so that you can get everything in. And one of the things that's on my calendar or on my bucket list, I should say, is to have coffee with some of my good girlfriends that I don't get to see, like sitting on a patio or not even coffee, but just seeing them. And one of the ideas that I had was to habit stack some of my bucket list items. So like I desperately want to make it to the farmers market as many weekends as I can this summer. And so inviting a friend like, "Hey, I'm gonna be down at the farmer's market, if you guys are down there, we should have a cup of coffee or bump into each other and say hi." And so like stacking some of those
Mhm.
things that you really want to do, a walk in the woods, a hike, something like that that you want to do anyways, and just inviting a friend along with can be a way to still set boundaries of what is your priority right now in life, but then, trying to also match, fit some of those people in that you really do genuinely want to see. And I like how you talked about your conversation with Ashley and how that conversation just kind of organically came up because you were feeling really overwhelmed.
Yeah, I think it's really important that we recognize that, like, gut feeling that we have when we get a text message from a friend, or we're asked to hang out, or we're asked to go do something. Like, what's that gut feeling that you have? And if that gut feeling is like, "Oh my gosh, when am I gonna fit it in?" Or, "I have to go look at my schedule," or I was hoping to do this. Like, if that's the gut feeling that you have, is this sense of overwhelm, like, you have to act on that. Don't just ignore it and go schedule that time, because now that time, you're gonna be thinking about it leading up to it. You're gonna be kinda dreading it. You're gonna be like, "Ah, I really wish that could just relax this afternoon." And so I think that first step, like, trust that gut feeling that you're having. It doesn't matter if you've been friends for 20 years or you've been friends for 6 months, or you haven't seen each other in a really long time and you feel like it's time again to, like, that, none of that means anything. Like, you have to trust that gut feeling and just act on it. And then that story of Ashley, like, when I did that and just said, like, "Oh my gosh," in my gut, I was like, "I am so overwhelmed right now. I don't know how to do this, but I love her and I need to see her because we haven't seen each other in a long time." Like, I was just able to look past that and throw it out there, and it was great for both of us. So I think it is really, really important that we just recognize when we're feeling that sense of overwhelm, or that we need to hang out with our friends, or it's the expectation to hang out with them, not that there's this, like, general desire to do it. Doesn't mean that they're not your friend anymore. It just probably means that we need to set some boundaries of what's realistic in the friendship.
Yeah. And, another thing that we want to talk about today is the seasons of friendships. And just because you and Ashley are in that season right now, where you're both busy with kids and your schedules can't really accommodate getting together regularly, doesn't mean you're not going to loop back around later on in life and end up seeing each other one, who knows, she could move to a neighborhood nearby and you guys could schedule walks
Mhm.
every week if you wanted to. I mean, it doesn't mean that that's how your friendship is now. Like there's no definitive thing. That's the beauty of friendships is they should be anyway this gift that is available to us at any given time. And I think this honesty when you bring in this honesty and these boundaries, And like we said, that freedom, that's what those friendships then are able to provide, is just freedom to be wonderful and enter in and exit out as the ebbs and flows of life and our schedules and our seasons go.
Yeah, and I think it's hard to figure out. I think about the relationships or friendships that are the really long-term ones, the ones that you've been friends since middle school or even before. When your friendship started, your kids and you're probably neighbors because you're going to the same school district and your interests are the same. There's probably a chance that you played sports together or were in band together or whatever it is that you did. And now, what, 20, 30 years later, it's you live across the country from each other and your interests are different and you have kids and you're parenting different. And it's like all of a sudden, like trying to figure out, like, you still love these friends, but it's a really, really hard new relationship to figure out of like, what is this friendship now and how does it work? And I know even in myself in doing that, sometimes I feel confused or I feel guilt or I feel like it's just heavy of like not having this friend, but not knowing how to be friends in this like new season
Mhm.
is a really hard and heavy burden to carry. I don't even wanna say burden, that's totally the wrong word, but it's heavy on your shoulders as you're navigating what this new season of friendship looks like.
Well, yeah, it's another thing that again, as women, I feel like a lot of times just feel like we have to hold. I mean, I say women because I look at my husband and he doesn't have. It doesn't seem like he has a lot of what he would consider like responsibility to friends. Like we're, for whatever reason, I feel like as women, that's another thing that we feel like we have the responsibility to uphold is adult
Mhm.
friendships. And probably some of it is, FOMO and social media. Like we see other friends getting together or whatever. But part of it is, again, I think that as women, we need each other. Like we do need adult female friendships. But again, like for me, going from like having every weekend booked with different friend groups, I mean, like it's just causing me anxiety even just thinking about it. It also can be too much. And so yes, we need these friendships, and maybe you don't currently have the friend that's the fit for your season of life right now. And maybe you're out there thinking like, I just want a friend. And I think again, it's because like we feel this responsibility, we feel this overwhelm, because I do think that it is necessary. Like you have to have something, but it shouldn't be this responsibility that we feel that we have to uphold. And especially if we're just in a season like like me and all of my high school friends, we all have tween to teenage kids.
Mhm.
And between sports and, they've got driver's ed, and a lot of them have 3 kids. And it's just like, there's just no way. And we all respect that. But then there's other friendships that in the meantime are, at the height of together because it more aligns with what we're doing on our day to day. And like you and we can align running errands together because our friendship's important and we want to fit time in together, but neither one of us necessarily has a ton of it either. And so again, like habit stacking some of those things to make sure that we are intertwining them, because again, depending on the season you're with different people, it may not be the same person that you're connecting with all the time throughout
Mhm.
the years. Like your best friend might change season to season, but we do need that person to talk about like the hard stuff, marriage, jobs, kids. Like as women, we can just be it can be such a beautiful support system that I think that's why we wanted to like make it important to help work that out and get and figure that out with people, because we're not saying certainly that you got to cut out all your friendships, but it's like they should be so important that you are prioritizing them and you are prioritizing the right ones for the right season.
Yeah, I think you said something really good there, Mindy. It was like recognizing the friend that fits into your season right now. Like that could be your person right now? It may not be the one that you think about, but what is the one that most aligns with your life right now? And maybe that's the friend right now that you can connect more to because your lives are so aligned versus like a friend that maybe you're trying to connect with and it's just not working, but it's because your seasons aren't aligned right now or your lives just aren't aligned, and that's
Mhm.
okay. And that's okay to like table that friendship and not have it be the person that you are confiding in the moment, or like venting about when you've had a frustrating day with your kids because they're not in the same season and it's hard to relate on the level that you emotionally need right now. It doesn't mean that that friendship is gone. It's just not the one that's providing that need right now. So I think like recognizing the types of friendships and who serves what purpose is a really important one too, to make sure that we're still getting that like emotional fulfillment that we need out of a friendship. It could be a different person dependent on what time or where you are in your life.
The other thing, and this is something that I have talked to my daughter, is, she's in middle school. And so, friend stuff is something that we talk about. And one thing that her and I've always shared with her is that there are different categories of friends. And I think that this is true for us as adults as well. And it's something I think that I sort of figured out by watching her and helping my daughter through friend stuff, because I had to look at it from almost like a more mature way, because I didn't want to necessarily give her the advice that was going through my head, like that little jerk, like. So I kind of developed this idea for her, but then I was listening to it myself, which I think is so much of parenting is that. But and it was that it is okay to have different categories of friends, and you just really need to understand who your friends are and what the purpose of that friendship is. And I think that, the last thing we were going to talk about is setting up expectations and boundaries with friends, or more expectations, I guess. And I think that that is something that can really help
Mhm.
you yourself figure out what those expectations are. And so what I explained to my daughter is, like, there are friends out there, and we need these too, these friends that are just so much fun. Like, they bring maybe the drama, they bring the laughs, they bring, they're just like so much fun to be around, so many laughs, and like you just get together with them and you laugh and you feel light and fun. They may not be the same friend that you're going to want to talk to about struggles or your deepest darkest secrets. And understanding that different
Mhm.
friends can offer you something different. They don't all like it. You don't have to have the same expectation for every single one of your friends. So there are friends that I trust with my deepest, darkest secrets. They know everything, literally all my skeletons, everything about me. And I trust them, and I go to them and talk to them when I'm having issues, when I'm having
Mhm.
struggles. I can pour my heart out to. There's other friends that I'm like, you know what? I want to go out and have a great time. I want to just go have some fun, have some laughs, maybe have a cocktail. And it's not going to necessarily be the
Mhm.
same person. Maybe it is, and that's awesome. But it is absolutely okay to have friends in your life that you're like, well, that friend is not going to keep my secrets to herself. If I tell her, all of these people are going to know. And so you don't share your secrets with them, and that's okay. And then again, having other people in your life that you can truly confide in. And so, and maybe, maybe there's other categories too. Like, I have friends who I know like love to read books. And so they're the people I talk to about the books that I'm reading. Or, there's just different, like the look at the way that you relate to each one of your friends. Like, what is it about them? What is it about that friendship that makes it special? And don't overcomplicate that.
Mhm.
Like, just be super grateful for what you have with that person. And again, it might not be the same level of friendship or the same closeness or whatever as they have with somebody else or that you have with somebody else. But just be super excited and grateful to have the friendship, and don't mucky it up with having too many expectations around it.
Yeah, I love that as a starting point. I feel like it totally sets you up for success in those relationships of not recognizing that one friend needs to serve all of the needs. Like, that's a
Mhm.
huge expectation to put on one friendship and a lot of weight to put on one friendship too. We don't do that anywhere else in our life. We don't go to one outlet to serve all of our needs. We like lots of different things. We do lots of different things. We work, we're married, we're serving all of these needs in very different spots. So we shouldn't expect one friendship to serve all of those needs. And just because a friendship, maybe it is the friendship for laughs, that doesn't make it a bad friendship because you don't share your deepest darkest secrets with them. It just that friendship isn't meant to serve that purpose. And I share and talk about the same thing with my daughters, and it's helped enormously. I see them in navigating their friendships. They don't put so much pressure on these relationships anymore. It's like it just kind of is what it is, and I'm going to appreciate it for what it is. And it's been an incredible sort of relief for them. And it definitely me too as I apply it to myself as well. It's like it gives you the clarity that you need of like, hey, I don't need to this friendship isn't a bad friendship. I don't need to end this friendship. I don't need to try to grow this friendship. It just exists in what it is, and that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and one thing, we're trying to follow our notes here and what we want to cover. And one thing that's not on there, but I think we should talk about it because I think there's a theme out there of, I don't really want to call myself middle-aged, but women of my age, um, sort of, I think, starting to feel a little bit lost
Hmm.
in friendships. Like maybe their season is is kind of dry right now with their old friendships or their high school friendships. Maybe they moved away or whatever. And so how does like a woman in her 30s or 40s just all of a sudden find,
Hmm.
because we do need them. Need women to lift them up and laugh with them and support them and all these things. And so and our friendship is fairly new, and we went from 0 to 60 in like overnight. And
Mhm.
so it certainly can happen. And I think that just giving a couple tips around that is could be really helpful for some women out there who are just feeling like I do need a friend. And maybe all of your friends out there are like in this busy season where they don't have time for you, and it's not because they don't love you, it's just because they're busy with family and children and jobs and things like that. So like, how do we just go and
Mhm.
find these people?
You know what's really interesting? Like when you ask that question, because that I think that's been both of us, or at least for me, for sure, for the last probably 10 years of feeling a little lost. Your best friends from high school and college are moved away, and we're doing kids, and all of a sudden you find yourself spending time with way different people than who you used
Mhm.
to spend a lot of time with. And I that was like a goal, not a written goal. It's not like I had written out make friends, but I obviously felt that need because I was, trying to make friends with all the sports moms and trying to hang out and do these things. And you can see like all of these friendships starting to layer in, but they all stayed like pretty surface level. It's like we didn't get that like deep friendship that I really needed in my life in that moment. And it almost like now looking back at it, it like became harder to manage because it's like you're layering in all of these
Mhm.
friendships, tons of them. And now all of a sudden there's a ton of them and you don't know how to manage it anymore. And you're just stressed out. I would say the common denominator or the difference between that and how we started our friendship was just showing up, being that like, I'm done. Like, I'm so tired. I'm so
Mhm.
over trying to pretend who I am or show up with this expectation from, just thinking I needed to show up in a certain way. And it was that moment where I'm like, hey, and we've talked about this on our podcast before. Here I am. I don't do you wanna be friends? Here's who I am. It was like we just laid it out and we're so raw and so authentic, and it created a very, very different type of friendship than all of these other friendships. They're still good friendships, but it was a different purpose. And so it probably sounds cliche and it's like what we talk about on this podcast all the time, but it was like showing up real, of like, stop trying to make it happen. so much and stop trying to show up as a version of yourself that you think you need to show up as and just show up and that what you put out there comes back in and then you create these relationships that wouldn't have happened had you not done that.
Yeah, well, if you think about probably the last time that you went out, that any of us have like went out with the purpose of like, I want to make a friend. It was like middle school
Yeah.
or grade school, or when it's really hard and you don't know who you are yet. You're like looking to all these people to like almost figure out your own self at that stage of the game. And so that's the only thing that we have to go back at. Like that's our only experience in life, is when we're like these little tiny people and we don't know anything about anything yet, and we're showing up and be like, will you be my friend, because I need a friend. And so and the way that we do that is like, to some degree, put on a front. And we don't have to do that when we go out to make friends now in your 30s and 40s, although that's like the only thing that we knew, is that you show up as who you think that they are looking for, and raise your hand and say hello.
Mhm.
And now, like exactly what you're saying, is it should be actually the exact opposite. And I think a good place to start is like you said, I mean, which is where we kind of got introduced anyway, is through our kids' sports, because that those people are in a similar season. And if nothing else, that you can find a friend to sit on the bench with before or after,
Mhm.
a basketball game or soccer game or whatever. And so, and finding, like, recognizing the people that are likely in your season and just saying, hey,
Mhm.
like introducing yourself and kind of taking that first step and that leap of faith, because I think that we all are constantly looking for connection.
Mhm.
And like you said, maybe you'll go through a dozen people and you're just like, yeah, they're just not my people. And that's okay.
That's great.
But I don't think that,
Mhm.
like, if you would have gotten that permission then to say, like, it's okay that I tried talking to this person and just not really feeling it. They're not, it's almost like dating.
Mhm.
Like, you don't have to settle for the first person who says, yeah, I'd love to grab coffee. Like, you can date them just like you would date your spouse, and decide like, no, I don't think that's the person I'm looking for in this
Yeah.
season. I'm going to try again.
Yeah, and show up, like, knowing what you need out of it too. We both knew what we needed out of a friendship and both knew, like, where our next step in life was going, and we just talked about those things, and lucky for both of us, they aligned, and that's what created that friendship. So it's like
Right.
show up to that conversation, like, being real and knowing what you need out of a friendship right now and throw it out there, and like you said, if it sticks, awesome. If it doesn't, awesome. You may not find it on the first one.
We should develop an app, like
I think so.
I feel like we talked about that once,
A friendship
like a
app.
matchmaking app for
Yeah.
friends, like to pair women up with other women.
Yeah.
If we
Shh,
if
Mindy,
we
don't give
develop an
away our
app, who's
ideas.
in? Yeah.
Nobody
Oh
steal
yeah,
our
I
idea.
won't take it.
Uh,
We got a patent going.
yeah.
So, in conclusion to this week's podcast episode, we encourage you to just do a little bit of reflection on your relationships, your specifically friendships that you have or don't have in your life right now, and turn to your gut, just like we recommend you turn to your gut for anything and everything else in life. And just spend some time thinking about those relationships. How are they serving you? Or maybe you owe some reciprocation to some friendships too, that are like, wow, I realize now that this friend has really been the leader in keeping us together, and it's time for me to step up my game a little bit and show up for them. Or maybe you're like, I need to set some boundaries. And again, just to recap that, honesty is the best policy. Like, if you have an open, honest conversation with a friend, they are not going to hate you. They are going to respect you. And if anything, they're just going to have more grace and more love for you, because they understand that you're in a tough season.
Mhm.
So do some reflection and just get honest with yourself and with your friends around you. and do it with the goal to ultimately make sure that you have enough margin in your personal schedule so that anytime you do have the opportunity to show up for your friends and get together with your friends, that you can actually show up wholeheartedly and excited to be there, not feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm so tired. I just wish I didn't have to do this. Because our friendships are a get to, they are a blessing and a gift. And we just want to make sure that they're healthy. So if there's anything else you would love to hear our input on around this topic, we would love to hear from you. Please go to our Instagram account. It's the Banyan Effect Podcast on Instagram and Facebook. Reach out, send us a message in our DMs. We would love to hear from you. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next week on the Banyan Effect Podcast. We hope you have enjoyed today's episode and found some valuable insights. If you liked what you heard, we'd love it if you would hit the subscribe button.
We love hearing from our listeners, so drop us a comment, share your thoughts on social, or review wherever you listen to podcasts. Your feedback keeps us going and helps us bring you the content you want to hear.
As always, we appreciate your time and company. Until next time, stay curious, stay inspired, and keep listening to the Banyan Effect Podcast.